Congressman Rahall, I'd be interested in what area of the state of West Virginia you represent and how much of it's rural versus urban. What are the major centers? And along with that, it was mentioned in one of your earlier answers to question that you've introduced some legislation about wind farms. I'm particularly interested in distribution of electric generation in local capacity or local areas so people could generate it on their own if they had to site for a windmill, for instance, a small windmill or a solar array. And I know now that the federal government does not provide particularly incentives to help people do that on a small one person or say a group of people basis, and wondered whether you would support tax incentives in some ways. I understand there's a production tax credit for wind right now, but it's basically limited to passive income loss, which most people don't have, or passive income offset. And there are also some issues with SEC regulation about grouping people together that would need to be liberalized.
You described it. You have described the tax incentives that are available accurately. And as far as additional tax incentives, which was one part of your question, while I may be supportive of it, under the new Democratic leadership in the Congress, we operate very stringently on the pay-go philosophy, which means for every loss to the Treasury, there has to be, you have to find where the money is coming from. You have to pay for any new incentives or any new spending or any loss of money to the Treasury. So, and we have provided for that in my coal to liquid technology, I might add, by saying the industry has to pay back when they're making a profit. But that's commendable and something I could certainly support. But again, we have to recognize, we have to find the money where it's going to come from. My district is rural in nature. It's southern part of West Virginia. The coal industry is the largest revenue producer to the state coffers, maybe not the largest employer that it once was because the technologies have been replacing man and womankind. But it's still very important to our state. The largest centers would be Huntington, Marshall University, former big steel town, but not like it used to be. Beckley, my hometown, and Logan, very heart of coal country. Bluefield, go up through Pocahontas County, beautiful rivers, beautiful skiing in snowshoe. Down south of that, Dairy County. So I have a quite diverse economic industry, and I have timbering and tourism, of course. We're developing a technology industry in southern West Virginia. My campaign and my record has been built on what I call the 3 T's: transportation, technology, and tourism, the 3 mainstays of our economy.
Sir, my name is Don Leziak, native of Cleveland, now Parham, Ohio, and a professional engineer, certified manufacturing engineer, robotics, and certified government financial manager. Now, you talk about converting coal to some kind of fuel. The Nazis did that in World War II.
Same technology.
Very grossly inefficient and not up to date. And I've got 2 alternative proposals, which the government financed and dropped. Superconducting magnets. As I worked as a consulting engineer in Boston, to convert powdered coal into direct electricity. The second part of the question is wireless electric power by Nikola Tesla, and I'm proposing a worldwide wireless system of electric power, which is on the internet on www.teslasociety.com. And my question is I don't think the U.S. government is so far advanced in some of the technology they're picking. Nikola Tesla invented AC electric power in 1895 and 1893 with George Washington. The question is, you're not on the right track, and you're not stepping in the right stones.
Well, let me say in regard to the technology being wasteful that you refer to, you're right, it was used by the Nazis. It's being used by Sasol in South Africa as we speak. And the technology, when done in the proper way, I would beg to disagree with all due respect, because you can capture the carbon today as it is emitted. You can sequester that carbon dioxide into the ground in saline formations, old mined out coal seams, or abandoned mine sites where it can be put in there. There are liability problems we need to work out. That's one of the reasons we are not passing it immediately. But it also can be used for enhanced oil recovery. In western Texas, for example, the oil industry is buying CO2 from coal-emitting plants. And they're pushing it in the ground, helping them to produce even more oil that they could not otherwise get to. So there are technologies there. Your advertisements, appreciate that, and certainly would not disagree that we need to look into those technologies to which you refer.
And I have a handout for the public after the meeting for more detail.
Congressman Rahall?
Yes, sir.
Historically, I think the mining industry in general, and perhaps the coal industry in particular, has shown that it's pretty much completely willing, in the name of profit, which is its bottom line, to leave behind whatever detriment it's allowed to leave the cost of recovery for the land, dealing with subsequent pollution, just leave that for another time and move on to another site, if at all possible, to leave those external diseconomies for someone else. Only the law can force a mining company to take on those costs at the time of extraction, which is when value is available to meet those costs. Do you feel that the current laws, state, but I think mainly federal, are adequate to make the extractive industry that you live with, the coal industry, bear its fair share of the cost of turning back over when the extraction is done to the world that is there afterwards, a properly recovered and safe property?
Immediate answer to your question is yes, current laws can work when properly enforced by the regulators and with the proper attitude of those regulators of enforcing what the law says. By way of background, my first year in Congress in 1977, I was on the conference committee that wrote the federal surface mining law called SMACRA, Surface Mining Reclamation Control Act. It was bitterly fought between environmentalists and the mining industry, basically over the issue of surface mining, strip mining as we called it back in those days. We enacted a compromise, and when President Jimmy Carter signed that law into law, that hot August day in the Rose Garden, behind him, besides myself, was the coal industry on one side and the environmental community on the other side. They came together in the spirit of compromise that's so necessary to pass legislation. And we said at that time that the industry had to return the strip mine land to approximate original contour, AOC, which for the most part they've been doing. We also set up a tax on the industry that goes into the Abandoned Mine Reclamation Fund to pay for such reclamation. The industry's been paying into that trust fund. The problem's been getting it appropriated, like with so many trust funds. It sits in Washington to make the deficit look smaller than what it is and actually going out for use for which the tax was collected. We also said on mountaintop mining removal operations, which the environmental community signed off at the time, that as part of the bonding and permitting process up front, the industry has to show where there will be better post-mining uses of that land and where the infrastructure will be put in place for better post-mining uses, like industrial parks, like high schools, churches, shopping centers, all of which we have in southern West Virginia built upon effectively reclaimed strip mine sites. And where that's done properly, and especially in an area like mine where flat land is a premium, that can work. It can be a win-win for everybody. Now, where it's gotten out of hand here lately, and we have lawsuits against the industry, is where it's not been properly enforced, and there has been illegal dumping by certain minority part of the coal industry into streams of the U.S. that have caused these lawsuits by the environmentalists, and they're working their way through the courts as we speak. So it can be done, and another part of that federal law in 77, another goal of it was to put all states on an even playing field, so that one state, like Kentucky used to do, would try to undercut, not require return to original contour, not require reclamation, so they could sell their coal for cheaper and undercut West Virginia. Now there's a minimum federal guideline. States can get tougher, yes, and some have, but at least we have that minimum guidelines in place from the federal level and a fund set up to pay for it.